Well, I've been very pleased to be here for the last year. It's been a very important transition in Indonesia's history. And I think, from my perspective, one of the most important achievements of relations between the United States and Indonesia is that we have so many common interests now that our relations are likely to continue to be very, very good under the new administration. Our two countries have growing trade and investment relations. We're very proud that American companies have been the largest investors here in Indonesia over the last 8 years, putting in more than $60 billion worth of investment. But we're also cooperating very closely on climate change, on military and counterterrorism issues, and of course we're looking to expand people-to-people ties. I think there's always room to do more to try to improve trade and investment, since that is such an important part of creating economic opportunities for our people. So we are looking forward to welcoming two very high-level investment missions in the next several weeks here to Indonesia. A second area of focus, I think, should be on education. President Jokowi has talked extensively about how he wants to raise education standards and establish more schools to provide skills for Indonesians. So I think there's great scope both to increase the number of Indonesians who are studying in the United States, but also perhaps for American institutions to do more here to partner with Indonesian universities and polytechnics to provide more higher education and skills development. And the third priority I'd like to mention is climate change. Our two countries are two of the largest greenhouse gas emitters in the world, and it's very important for us to work together, both to help Indonesia to reduce emissions from the clearing of forests, but also to help Indonesia transition to a more clean energy reliance. So we have a very important program under the Millennium Challenge Corporation to help finance and catalyze investments in renewable energy. We are already thinking about ways that we can cooperate in terms of enforcement to help train police and other law enforcement officials to apprehend people who are responsible for starting fires. But we also have a lot of non-governmental organizations, such as the World Resources Institute, which is based in Washington, which has a satellite-based system called Global Forest Watch, which Indonesian law enforcement authorities can use to monitor where fires are taking place and on whose land those fires are taking place, so that the companies can be held accountable. Yeah, I know this is a very high priority for President Jokowi. He has a background in forestry, so he's an expert in this area. And I think one of the important recent steps that's been taken is that Indonesia has ratified the ASEAN Trans-Boundary Haze Agreement. So I think more resources will be devoted to combating this problem. And I want to stress that the problem is of interest to the United States, not because the haze goes to the United States, but because lots of carbon gets released into the atmosphere when these fires take place. A lot. This is one of our highest priorities. As I said earlier, we're doing everything we can to try to encourage more Indonesians to come to the United States. Just under 8,000 now study in Amerika, but we'd like to encourage many more to come to the United States. And I'd like to emphasize that it's easier than ever for Indonesians to study. 96% of Indonesians who apply for a visa for travel for student purposes receive a visa. And we're very happy that 10 members of the president's new cabinet studied or did exchanges in the United States. So that shows that a period of study in America pays dividends and is very good for this country. The other area that we're trying to develop is to encourage more partnerships between American universities and Indonesian universities. And the number of partnerships is growing very substantially. I was visiting ITB yesterday in Bandung and was pleased to hear that they have partnerships with more than 20 different American universities. So we want to establish that pattern of cooperation where universities are exchanging researchers, sending teachers back and forth, and eventually we hope that those partnerships can become partnerships where students can study for 1 or 2 years in the United States and maybe the rest of the time in Indonesia, or vice versa. And I'd like to just say one thing to the readers of Kabari, which is that members of the diaspora can perform a very, very valuable function by encouraging universities, particularly those in the United States, to develop programs of Indonesian studies and to help fund such programs. So I think there's a very important role for the diaspora as well. Well, my short-term program is to get to know all of the new ministers in the cabinet, and to develop a program of cooperation with each of those important ministries so we can further develop relations between our two countries. And I think there's many opportunities. So one example of a potentially new area of cooperation is in the maritime domain, where President Jokowi has given great priority to expanding the number of ports around Indonesia, expanding maritime trade, and also helping to develop the fisheries sector. I think there are a number of opportunities for both our governments and our companies to cooperate together. And then the longer term priority is to continue to think about creative ways to develop our people-to-people contacts and to develop our friendship, not just with the people around Jakarta, but all over this great country. And so to expand, for example, sister cities programs. I was talking with the mayor of Bandung yesterday, Mayor Camel, about a sister city program that he has with Fort Worth, Texas. But also, again, to look at more longer-term education cooperation programs that we can help to develop. And again, I think the diaspora has an extremely important role to play in helping to develop these people-to-people contacts. Well, another area that I think we'll continue to try to develop is in the military domain, where Indonesia is playing a greater role in the world now. For example, you are sending peacekeeping forces in many parts of the world. So the United States has helped to develop a peacekeeping training center here in Sentul, near Jakarta. So I think we can continue to work to develop those kinds of cooperation. But in addition to that, Indonesia will want to develop its Navy and its maritime domain awareness. So I think there are many areas for cooperation between our militaries in that area. Another very important priority always is the protection of our citizens. And for the last many years, the United States and Indonesia have cooperated very well on counterterrorism issues. And such cooperation is more important than ever with the threat that is posed by ISIL, the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. And the United States, like Indonesia, is very concerned about the return of foreign fighters to both of our countries from that area. Well, that can be a touchy issue in many countries, where, as you say, there are mixed marriages. And one of the things that we have encouraged our friends in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government of Indonesia to do is to adopt and then ratify what's called the Hague Convention. And the Hague Convention facilitates dialogue and cooperation on all of these very important issues. So this is something that we encourage partners around the world to adopt. And I think that this would, given the growing people-to-people relations between the United States and Indonesia, this would be a very positive step that Indonesia can take to help resolve some of these issues. But it also provides a legal framework and a legal mechanism to help resolve these often very, very difficult issues. Actually, it's not difficult. It's very easy. And again, the issuance rates, the approval rates for tourist visas are very, very high. And so I just encourage everybody to come and apply. It almost always takes less than 5 days. It's very, very easy. You can apply online and then come in very quickly for an appointment. You can usually get your visa within 24 hours once you've had your interview. So the whole system is very, very fast and very, very easy. And we want to extend the warmest welcome to all of our Indonesian friends, many of whom are now traveling to the United States. We're very happy that companies like Garuda and Delta Airways have established a partnership to make it easier than ever for Indonesians to fly to the United States and to use their Garuda miles to go to the United States. No, I've had the great pleasure of being able to travel very widely already in Indonesia, from northern Sumatra all the way to Papua and to Kalimantan and Bali and Lombok and Flores and Manado and many other countries, many other parts of Indonesia. And it's just been a wonderful experience, and I've really been touched by the friendliness of all the Indonesian people and the very warm reception that I receive everywhere. What's great about Indonesia, first of all, is that you value your culture and you take great pains to preserve your culture, which is a wonderful thing. But also the tremendous diversity that one sees from Sumatra to Papua to a place like Toraja, which are all very, very different and in each in their own way very unique places. And I always encourage our friends in America to not just go to the famous places like Borobudur, which of course are beautiful, but to get a little bit off the beaten track and go to places like Flores or again Toraja, or which are equally beautiful and unique. And Indonesia also has some of the world's greatest biodiversity, not only under the water in places like Komodo, but also in Labuan Bajo, but also Raja Ampat. And then of course on land to go see some of the wonderful parks where one can see wild orangutans and tigers, and again things that you will only find in Indonesia. I don't find excessive difficulties. I think most of these places are becoming more and more accessible now. You have airlines like Lion Air and Air Asia that make air travel in Indonesia increasingly affordable. Of course, the road networks could be improved a little bit, but they're certainly adequate for tourists like me. And certainly there are beautiful hotels almost everywhere in Indonesia. So there really aren't too many barriers to getting around and having a wonderful time here. You got to remember, I came here in 1978 as when I was in college, and I was traveling around with a backpack on my back. Then I was traveling, by Bajaj and by little microbuses and things like that. Things have improved a lot since then. But I do a lot of travel off the beaten track. So I like to go climb volcanoes, and I like to go diving in faraway islands and things like that. So I have to use the same transportation networks as everybody else. Well, just to extend my very warmest greetings to all the members of the Indonesian diaspora, and to say that they have a very important role to play to support Indonesia as it becomes a more and more important country in the world, and that they, again, need to do everything they can to encourage more educational partnerships, to encourage more Americans to go to Indonesia, to encourage more Indonesians to come to the United States. So they have an enormous, important role to play. Also, for those who are in the United States, to help Americans understand how much has changed in Indonesia, and how Indonesia really is becoming a very important partner for the United States. So they need to do everything they can to explain Indonesia to America, and to put Indonesia more on the American map. Very welcoming.